And there we go.
I'm Dr. Shirley Marks. I'm a retired board certified psychiatrist from Tyler, Texas. I've practiced most of my clinical and administrative years in the state of Texas. I graduated from Harvard Medical School, and I've been saying it more now, I guess, because I've just had my 50th reunion at Harvard Medical.
Yes.
And because I'm getting up in age, I may not be around long to tell that story. So, but I'm the second Black female to graduate from Harvard Medical. And that sounds like, really? Because the medical school, has been in existence since the 1700s, and even had slaves as students at the medical school. And it was all male until 1945. It's kind of I shouldn't say strange history, but it's a surprising history because people just assumed that, well, you had a medical school, you had males and you had females. But that was a time when women went into nursing. So in 1945, because of the war, there were few men around, not only to treat and care for vets and returning veterans, but also they were just gone themselves. So they decided to have, I think it was called the War Committee, to start admitting women. So the first women were admitted in 1945. And of course, all white. And then in 1947, the first Black female was admitted. And coincidentally, she was from Texas. She and her family went on to to Boston, as she finished from Tufts and was admitted. Now, that was 22 years before I was admitted. And that just goes to show you the rather awful history that they had, but that is the story. And even in any one year, there was never more than 3 African American or African students who were male. There were some years there would be maybe 3, all were African nationals, or maybe only 1, and it would be an African national, but never as many as 3 African American males. So even the numbers were not that good, even for the male African Americans. And I had always wanted to be a veterinarian. And after going to Spelman College, my alma mater in Atlanta, I changed my interest to human medicine rather than animal medicine. And so that's how I developed an interest in medicine. And I thought I was going to become either pediatrician or obstetrician. That's usually what females were doing back in the day. This was 1969. There's a little historical perspective to that. This was the year after Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were assassinated. And I bring that up because history is repeating itself because of what was happening back in the 60s of not accepting Blacks because they said there was not a minority pool. What's beginning to happen now is that the colleges and universities are going to have to change their whole admission process and everything. And one of the remedies that's been discussed is increased recruitment. And it was unfortunate that it was Harvard as a generic Harvard, because I really do feel like the Harvard Medical School did it the right way. And so Harvard, I have to say his name, he's now deceased, Dr. Potter, was on the recruitment council for all 3 of the medical schools in Boston. They came together, funded the council, and started recruiting. And they knew of Morehouse because several Morehouse men had been accepted during that time. But of course, no Black female had. And I just happened to be over at Morehouse because I took most of my science courses over there and had also done a summer course the previous summer. And his eyes just lit up because, like, really? They had not heard of Spelman. So anyway, the rest is history. And if you were in the seminar yesterday, she was just hitting so many points that she, meaning Dr. Simmons, that fit my journey. because I was one of those students who didn't have calculus as a in high school. And so when I went to college, I thought I was going to be a math major and took calculus. And then I ended up with other courses, and I only took that first semester of calculus and didn't complete the year. And so when I was accepted to Harvard Medical, that was my acceptance contingent upon completing a full year of calculus. And so all of that was kind of a deja vu, because what happened, they could have very easily just pushed the application aside and said, well, she didn't meet the qualifications. Right. But because they had that commitment, they said, and that's what I did during the summer between college and starting medical school. I took the second semester of calculus in the summer at Harvard and came on in. So I was one of, there were a total of 16 of us. Now, some were at the dental school, and then the rest of us were medical school of African Americans. And they really didn't know what was going to work, because they were really trying to make it, which we talk about now, make sure whatever skills you're bringing either fits or is an asset to the community, but the assets that you bring. So some of our students already had PhDs. There were 3 or 4 of us who were from HBCUs, and some were from Harvard College, some were from other Ivy Leagues, and some were just from other schools. So we were diverse. And Dr. Alvin Poussaint came over from Tufts to be our dean. Okay. And that was very helpful as well.
Dr. Marks, you mentioned it already about history repeating itself. So for those, the obstacles that you had to endure, and now some young person and the obstacles that they have to endure, can you just share some insight about what kind of mindset you had to have in order to overcome?
The biggest obstacle I see, or now and saw then, was isolation. That was brought up today in one of the seminars when they were talking about residents being dismissed from programs. And I must say that Harvard Medical did have that commitment to retain students. There were some of us, as I say, I just came back from my 50th reunion in May, and some didn't finish with the 50th. Now, some chose to not finish. They may have taken a sabbatical for something. One guy wrote books and another did other things, but that was one thing that they did do to make sure that we accepted you. We want to retain you. And so I believe all of our students did finish, even if they didn't, they may not have finished with the class, but they celebrated the reunion with us. And so I would say isolation is the first. And in some ways, you may have heard one of the members of the Supreme Court mention he thought whenever he was amongst classmates, they saw him as being a product of special privilege, with the affirmative action program. And there was a little of that because we were new. They didn't have a lot of Black students in the classes. But I don't think that was so much of, I didn't feel the burden of that. But, and for me, again, I'm the second Black female, so I'm the only Black female, So the isolation of just us not having another community, but my personal story of just the isolation. And I found out later, talking with another one of my white classmates, that she felt the isolation as well. So it was a time when women were not accepted. Now, in most of the medical schools, I know Harvard is one, women have the majority of the students are female. And so that's just a trend that's happening across the country. That, and then the other, which would not be surprising, is that we didn't have mentors, professors who looked like us. So, none of us had Black professors who taught us. We didn't have Black chief residents, So I knew some of the, just like, I don't know if you know Dr. Vivian Penn. She was there over at Tufts, and I knew Dr. Lou Sullivan. So some of the practitioners who are older, I knew of them because they had various different positions there. But I would say that, the isolation is just not having someone you could identify with. Probably not even having the study groups. Now, I did not stay in the dorm, and I think had I done that, that would have helped in terms of more socialization and interaction with all folks, whether they were white, black, female, male. And then other than that, just I was from the South, and, and here I am in Boston, just the whole cultural, I had to acclimate to the culture, the weather, all of that. But I I just came from strong-minded and strong-willed people, and a mother and father, and I just think that was a little part of it. And then I having an older sister who had gone to an HBCU in Fisk, and we're trying to tell parents, and they really are pushing it more. A lot of the parents are really wanting their children to attend the HBCUs, that they can see that there's something lacking when they may have that goal of going to Ivy League school or something, but they somehow they miss something. They miss a little nurturing that our HBCUs and our professors did. And even in high school, all of my teachers had masters, and if they didn't have it when they started teaching, they got their masters in the summer. It was just the way it was. Whereas even in Boston, sometimes the kids might have been taught by teachers' aides, so it's just, so we talk about that sometimes. I also just came back from my high school reunion. It's an all-year reunion because that's another history. Schools, if you were from the South, schools closed rather than integrate. So the school that I went to closed in 1970. And so the last class that graduated from my high school was 1970. So we have all year reunion. It's a common thing, at least in Texas anyway. So I just came back from that. That was just in July. So
last question,
yeah.
Dr. Mark. There's a young black girl watching this right now and seeing you as a trailblazer. What would you tell her?
I would say first, follow the dream and make sure your dream is realistic. Now, someone may say, well, how would she know that? Well, that's also part of the process. Even if she says she wants to be an astronaut, again, depending on what age she is, if she's old enough to be able to spell it and know what they do, then she can't be taking theater. Now, don't get me wrong. I have classmates from Harvard who were art history majors, but they at least got all the qualifications and they were able to get in. But my point is, if that's your true dream, now if you're dreaming, but if that's your dream goal for a career, now I would say to her also, because it happens to most physicians, you may have the dream now, but that may change 2 or 3 times. And so I would ask her, well, why do you want to be whatever it is? Let's just say it's an astronaut. And then I say, well, what do you think? Do you know one? Because that's having a mentor, someone that makes a big difference. Again, we talk about separate but equal. My little town we had our own black clinic, own black doctors. Even in Boston, the average age of the doctor when I went there, and this is in the 60s and 70s, was like 69, 70 years of age, whereas we had that. So we were able to identify with people, who had those degrees and who could, even though they weren't mentors, but you could identify with them. So to say I've never seen a black doctor, I saw a black doctor. To say I've never seen a black veterinarian, My father was in college at Prairie View with a black veterinarian who was treating some big expensive cows in Oklahoma, you know. So I think a lot of that is just your exposure also. So if someone has a dream like that, they need to get out, be exposed, take advantage of opportunities. One of the things I did. Sometimes I would ask myself, now why did I select this tough course? But I'm always looking on the board because we didn't have those special programs, you know, well, we did have some advanced course. I shouldn't say that. That would encourage you to take such and such because that would lead to such and such. I just had the interest, would apply, got accepted, and do it. You know, I should never forget. I did a National Science Foundation summer program. Was the only black in the program, and I'm going to say it on this tape because I don't know where it's going to end up. But even though Texas is considered South, we don't consider ourselves Deep South. So some things, some of us never really experienced, you know, none of the marching. But that was the first time I was ever asked out of a public facility. And it still gives me a little twinge to this day. But one of the students in the program, because like I said, all white but me, one of the students in the program, we went to the beach. You know, I went, they went, and there were about, I guess, 5 girls in the car. And I guess he was the sheriff, came up to me. Yeah, I'm just in the beach, and I'm high school. This is high school, and told me I had to get out. And to this day, so it's this is Indiana. So to this day, I have no love for Indiana, but that was the first time. So you know, when I hear of the stories now, because it's definitely repeating itself. I mean, definitely repeating itself. People don't understand how those little comments or telling a kid that no, you can't be such and such, or even even if we go to the more social issues, you know, with the banned book situation, they just don't understand how you can have just a little bit of encouragement, like to that student you're talking about, to encourage them to, yeah, you're female, you can be an astronaut. I know one, you know, with Jameson was down in the Houston area, and I practiced down in the Houston area, and just try to encourage that child to, you know, find mentors, stay on course, know that your dream might change, you know, why are you, or is that your dream or your parents' dream? You know, make sure it's your dream so you can put your all in it, be well prepared. And I have to say for the students now is please get you some good language skills.
Yeah.
Now I may get some pushback from some people listening to this because it's something about our generation of children now, kids, not children, just they just don't speak the language. You know, you need to be, because I'm a psychiatrist, and my last position was an administrative position for the criminal justice system. So you need to be able to speak to someone who may be a homeless person or in the criminal justice system, a criminal, or you may be in London speaking with someone who has a title, but you still can be able to make that shift. And that's one of my concerns at this time, that, you know, we're not looking to, how can I say this? We're not taking enough note and encouraging our children to learn English. It's still English. I mean, we used to say King's English. We don't say that anymore. But that helps, and to have good language and communication skills. Because a lot of times that'll get you that job, or that'll get you in that interview to get in a certain school, when, especially if you're coming in after your essay, or, you know, that can get you over sometimes.
Well, thank you so much. You heard it here first from legend Dr. Shirley Marks. Thank you so much for joining us here at the NMA Live 2023.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation.